Sender. It's a term we use often in the mission world. It's an all-encompassing term for the person who stays and sends missionaries out, right? So what do? They give money, they pray, they support in other ways. There's a whole host of ways that they can support somebody. I want to share with you real quick. I want to challenge you on two fronts. And the first one I want to challenge you on as a sender, if this is you, if this applies to you, and that's likely anybody right now that's in America, even if you're planning to go overseas, there's an aspect in which you are currently still in a sender role or could be in a sender capacity. In John 20:21, Jesus says this, "As the Father has sent me, so am I sending you." The question I always ask people when I teach classes on this or preach sermons is I'll ask people like, who is the sender here? Pay attention to this. Jesus starts off by saying, "As the Father has sent me." And I'll say, well, who's the sender? And everyone says, the Father. All right, so the Father sends the Son. And then Jesus says, "As the Father has sent me, so am I sending you." Well, who's the sender of us? And everyone says, Jesus. So I'm saying, okay, so the Father is a sender and the Son is a sender. The sender is often seen as a second-class Christian. That's how they feel oftentimes. They're like, well, I'm just the sender. I'm just the sender. But imagine the Father saying to the Trinity, to the Son and the Spirit, guys, I'm just the sender. I'm just the sender. Or Jesus saying, I'm just the sender. That doesn't make any sense. In fact, what I would argue is that when Jesus lays that out for us, he actually raises the bar, not lowers the bar, for what it means for us to be a sender. As the Father has sent me. Well, what did the Father do when he sent the Son? He gave him all his power, all his authority. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me, right? He did not hold back. He gave him everything, and yet he remained who he was. He didn't lose his identity. He didn't lose any of his power. He shared in that, and he sent him with all that. And then when Jesus sends us, what does he do? He says, I'm with you to the very end of the age. All the authority in heaven and earth has been given to me, and I'm sending you, and I'm going with you. And he says, I'm sending the power of the Holy Spirit upon you to be my witnesses. And so when the Father and the Son as model examples of what it means to be a sender, what it means for us as senders is that actually, I tell people this, it's actually harder and probably more costly to be a sender if we understand it biblically than it is to be one who goes. The second thing I want to add to that, because it's so costly, what that means for us then in our giving is that we're not to be a people asking the question, what's the least amount I can give to satisfy God? And where everybody lands is the tithe. The problem is that if you study the tithe in the Old Testament, there were a couple different tithes that people gave. And so really it added up to close to 30% of what they were producing that would be given out. The tithe, though, in the New Testament is replaced with generous, cheerful, sacrificial. And you have Paul talking about in that context, the Macedonians giving out of their poverty to support the cause and to support the Jews in Jerusalem that were suffering, the Christians there that were suffering. And Paul says he uses the Macedonians as his example. And so for all of us, there is a generous, cheerful, sacrificial giving that we can do. And when it comes to the mission of God and we understand our role as senders, we're more than a functional ATM. We're not just say all the right things to me and I'll give you some money. In fact, I would argue that if you were more involved as a sender in the lives of missionaries and even mission organizations, you would probably end up giving more, just like you do with your own children as you're involved in their lives, just like you do with your own family, that when you start to be more involved and are part of it, and not just in the praying but in keeping up to date with their newsletters and understanding what's going on, communicating regularly with them, talking about the mission as if it was your mission too, I highly suspect that your giving is going to match the passion and the involvement that you have there. And so a lot of times the questions we need to ask about giving isn't always so much how much do I give, it's how much are you willing to give to see the goal accomplished. But if you're not part of the goal, you're always just going to see it as how much do you need to get by and how much do I need to feel better with God that I gave enough. And so I want to challenge you when it comes to giving, when it comes to being a sender, don't think of it in terms of dollar amounts. Think of it in terms of cheerful, generous, sacrificial. Think of it in terms of being a sender like the Father and the Son are senders. And then being involved in the work, having the same passion and goal that the people you're sending have, and then see what starts to happen with your giving. My guess is you're going to find a way to give more and to support the work that you yourself are actually a part of. Because it tells us in 3 John verses 5, it says that we are to be fellow workers. The word is synergos. It means co-laborers with those that we send. So if you want to be a better giver, or you're interested in giving, or you're currently giving right now, my challenge to you is see yourselves as co-workers with those that you send. And how would you take care of them financially if you were as much a part of the work as they themselves are there on the ground?